The waiting room smelled like vanilla air freshener and broken dreams. I sat in one of those beige chairs that cost more than my first car, watching Dr. Sloane's office door like it might explode. Behind that door, my wife Marlene was probably rehearsing her next verbal assault. She had a gift for finding the exact words that would cut deepest. "Mr. Pierce?" Dr. Sloane's voice carried that practiced therapist tone, warm but professional, like a customer service representative for human misery. "We're ready for you." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I walked into the office where Marlene sat perched on the edge of the couch, her blonde hair pulled back in that severe ponytail she wore when she meant business. She looked like she was ready to dissect something, and I had a sinking feeling that something was me. "Landon," Dr. Sloane began, settling into her chair with a notepad, "Marlene has shared some concerns about your relationship. I'd like to hear your perspective." Before I could open my mouth, Marlene leaned forward with that smile she reserved for delivering maximum damage. "Doctor, I think you should know something about my husband." Her voice dripped with false sweetness. "He's so pathetic in bed that I had to get a lover just to remember what it feels like to be satisfied by a man." The words hit me like a physical blow. Dr. Sloane's pen stopped moving, the air conditioning hummed. Somewhere in the distance, a phone rang. But in that office, silence stretched like a rubber band about to snap. I stared at Marlene, this woman I'd loved for 8 years, this woman I'd built a life with, and felt something fundamental shift inside me. Not heartbreak, that would come later. This was something colder, more calculating. This was the moment I stopped being her husband and became her opponent. "I see," I said quietly, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening in my chest. "That's illuminating." Marlene's smile widened. She thought she'd won. She thought humiliating me in front of a stranger would somehow fix whatever was broken between us. What she didn't realize was that she'd just declared war on someone who made a living understanding systems, finding weaknesses, and exploiting them. Dr. Sloane cleared her throat. "This is obviously a very charged revelation. Landon, how does that make you feel?" How did it make me feel? Like I'd been married to a stranger. Like the last 8 years had been an elaborate con game. Like I'd been sleeping next to someone who saw me as nothing more than a convenient target for her contempt. "Disappointed," I said finally, "but not surprised." Marlene's smile faltered slightly. She'd expected tears, maybe anger, possibly begging. Cool acceptance wasn't in her script. "We should explore this further," Dr. Sloane said, but I was already standing. "I think we've explored enough for today," I said, looking directly at Marlene. "I need some time to process this information." I walked out of that office with my dignity intact and my marriage effectively over. In the parking lot, I sat in my Honda Civic, practical, reliable, everything Marlene claimed to hate about me, and pulled out my phone. The text to Leah Sanderson, the sharpest divorce attorney in the city, was simple. "We need to talk. Tonight, it's time." My home office had always been my sanctuary. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a desk I'd built myself from reclaimed oak, and 3 monitors that gave me a window into the digital world where I actually had control. This was where I retreated when the physical world became too messy, too unpredictable. Tonight, it was command central for the most important project of my life. Marlene was downstairs watching her reality shows, probably texting her lover about how brilliantly she'd destroyed me in therapy. She had no idea that her husband, the pathetic, boring cybersecurity consultant, was about to demonstrate exactly why people paid him 6 figures to protect their secrets. The beauty of being married to someone for 8 years is that you know all their passwords. Marlene used the same 4 variations for everything: our anniversary, her birthday, our cat's name, and password 123 when she felt creative. She'd never been particularly imaginative. Her phone backed up to our shared cloud storage. Her laptop connected to our home network. Her social media accounts were linked to her email, which I'd helped her set up years ago. She'd built her affair on a foundation of digital breadcrumbs, and I was about to follow them all the way back to the source. The first message thread made my stomach turn. Not because of the betrayal, I'd already processed that, but because of the sheer banality of it. "Can't wait to see you tonight," and "my husband is working late again, perfect timing," and dozens of photos I definitely didn't need to see. But I kept reading, kept downloading, kept documenting, because this wasn't about my feelings anymore. This was about building a case. Brent Collier, 32 years old, worked as a pharmaceutical rep specializing in physical therapy equipment. Divorced, no kids, lived in a downtown apartment that cost more than our mortgage. He'd been sleeping with my wife for 6 months, and from their messages, it was clear he thought I was completely oblivious. Your husband seems like the type who wouldn't notice if you burned the house down. He'd written 2 weeks ago. He's too busy with his computers to pay attention to anything real, Marlene had replied. I saved that exchange to a special folder labeled Evidence. By midnight, I had everything. Hotel receipts charged to our joint credit card for continuing education seminars that didn't exist. Explicit photos taken in our bedroom while I was traveling for work. Messages planning their next rendezvous, scheduled for this coming weekend while I was supposedly visiting my mother. But the real treasure was buried deeper in their conversation history. Brent hadn't just been sleeping with my wife, he'd been pumping her for information about my work. Questions about my clients, my security protocols, my travel schedule. Apparently, industrial espionage was easier when you could get the target's wife to do the reconnaissance. I leaned back in my chair and smiled for the first time since that therapy session. Marlene thought she was so clever, but she'd been played by an amateur, and now they'd both played themselves. My phone buzzed with a text from Leah. Can meet tomorrow at 9 a.m. Bring everything. I looked at the 3 flash drives I'd prepared, each containing enough evidence to bury both of them. Already done, I typed back. Marlene left for work the next morning like nothing had changed. She kissed my cheek, the same perfunctory peck she'd given me for months, and reminded me that she'd be late because of a staff meeting. I knew better. According to her messages with Brent, they were meeting at the Marriott downtown. Room 412, charged to the credit card that I'd already called to cancel. At 9 sharp, I was sitting across from Leah Sanderson in her glass-walled office overlooking the city. Leah was everything Marlene pretended to be. Sharp, successful, and genuinely intimidating. She'd made her reputation as a prosecutor before switching to family law, where she'd developed a talent for dismantling cheating spouses with surgical precision. Jesus, Landon, she said, scrolling through the evidence on my laptop. She really didn't try to hide any of this, did she? She thought I was too stupid to notice, I said. Turns out that was a miscalculation. Leah pulled up the hotel receipts, the message threads, the photos. This is more than enough for a no-fault divorce with favorable terms. But you said there was more? I showed her the messages between Brent and Marlene about my work. Industrial espionage. He was using her to get information about my client's security systems. That's a federal crime, Leah said, her eyes lighting up with the predatory gleam. Have you reported this? Not yet. I wanted to talk to you first. She leaned back in her chair, studying me. What exactly are you looking for here, Landon? A clean divorce or total destruction? I thought about Marlene's smile in that therapist's office, about years of subtle put-downs and casual cruelty, about the way she'd tried to humiliate me in front of a stranger because she thought I was too weak to fight back. Total destruction, I said. Leah smiled. Now we're talking. The first strike came at 2:17 p.m. I was monitoring Marlene's location through the family tracking app she'd insisted we install for safety. She was at the hotel when her credit card was declined for room service. Then her personal credit card was declined. Then her debit card. I'd frozen every account with her name on it. My phone rang 30 seconds later. Landon, what the hell is wrong with our cards? Her voice was tight with panic and embarrassment. I'm not sure what you mean, I said calmly. Is there a problem? Don't play dumb with me. Fix this. Now. I'll look into it, I said. Might take a few days to sort out. You know how banks can be. The line went silent. Strike 2 came an hour later. I'd spent my lunch break visiting Brent's office, a gleaming medical complex where pharmaceutical reps courted physical therapists with expensive lunches and golf outings. His boss, Mr. Delgado, was a serious man who took a dim view of anything that might compromise his company's reputation. Mr. Delgado, I'd said, shaking his hand in the lobby, I'm Landon Pierce. I believe one of your representatives, Brent Collier, has been conducting unauthorized business with my wife's physical therapy practice. I showed him printed copies of messages where Brent had offered Marlene special deals on equipment in exchange for private consultations. Taken out of context, they looked like exactly what I'd implied. Kickbacks and potentially fraudulent billing practices. This is very concerning, Mr. Delgado had said, studying the messages. We'll investigate immediately. By 4 p.m., Brent's company access was suspended pending a full review of his client relationships. Strike 3 was waiting for Marlene when she got home. I was sitting at the kitchen table with a manila envelope and a cup of coffee, looking for all the world like I was just catching up on paperwork. She stormed through the front door like a hurricane, her face flushed with anger and humiliation. You son of a bitch, she started, but I held up a hand. Before you say something you'll regret, I said quietly. You should probably look at this. I slid the envelope across the table. She opened it with shaking hands and went white as she saw the printed screenshots of her affair. Every message, every photo, every lie documented in full color. "Where did you get these?" she whispered. "Does it matter?" I stood up, towering over her for the first time in our marriage. "You wanted to humiliate me yesterday. Consider the favor returned." She looked up at me with something I'd never seen before, fear. "Landon, we can work this out. The therapy, it's helping. We can—" "No," I said simply. "We can't. You made that decision yesterday when you decided to destroy our marriage in front of a stranger. Now I'm making mine." I walked toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and Marlene? You might want to call Brent. I think he's having a bad day too." The next few days were like watching a controlled demolition in slow motion. Marlene tried everything. Tears, anger, bargaining, threats. But I'd moved beyond the reach of her emotional manipulation. I'd found something more satisfying than her approval. Her complete and total defeat. She'd enlisted her mother, Judith, a steel-haired woman who'd never liked me but had tolerated me because I provided for her daughter. Judith arrived on Thursday morning like an avenging angel, ready to put me in my place and restore order to her daughter's world. "Landon," she announced, barging into my home office without knocking. "This nonsense has gone far enough. Marlene made a mistake, but destroying your marriage over it is childish." I looked up from my computer, where I was reviewing the divorce papers Leah had prepared. "Judith, with all due respect, your daughter didn't make a mistake. Yeah, she made a choice. Multiple choices, actually, over 6 months." "Men cheat all the time," she said dismissively. "Women learn to forgive and move on. It's called being an adult." I turned my laptop screen toward her. On it was a video file I'd recovered from Marlene's deleted folders, a recording she'd made after one of our earlier therapy sessions, intended for Brent. "I told Dr. Sloan that Landon was emotionally abusive," Marlene's voice came through the speakers. "Complete lie, obviously, but she ate it up. If I can get her to document a pattern of psychological abuse, I can take him for everything in the divorce." Judith's face went through several interesting color changes as she listened to her daughter casually planning to destroy me with false accusations. When the video ended, she sat down heavily in my reading chair. "She was going to claim abuse?" Judith whispered. "Among other things," I said. "Your daughter isn't just an adulterer, Judith. She's a sociopath. And now she's my ex-wife." Judith left without another word, but Marlene's most devastating loss came from an unexpected source. Her best friend Tina, the gossipy real estate agent who'd been Marlene's partner in crime for years. They'd spent countless evenings at wine bars, dissecting other people's relationships and marriages with surgical precision. Tina had been Marlene's biggest supporter when the affair started, encouraging her to live her truth and not settle for less than she deserved. But Tina was also a pragmatist who understood which way the wind was blowing. I ran into her at the grocery store on Saturday morning. "Landon," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "How are you holding up?" "Better than expected," I said. "It's amazing how liberating the truth can be." She nodded slowly. "I heard about everything. The evidence you found?" "Some of it," I said. "There's more, but my lawyer advised me to keep it confidential for now." That was a lie, but Tina didn't need to know that. She just needed to understand that staying loyal to Marlene was a losing proposition. "For what it's worth," she said quietly, "I think Marlene lost her mind. What she did to you, it's unforgivable." By Monday morning, Tina was telling everyone who would listen that she'd always had concerns about Marlene's judgment and that she felt terrible for poor Landon. The same social circle that had supported Marlene's affair was now treating her like a pariah. Marlene called me Tuesday night sobbing. "They're all turning against me," she cried. "Tina, my mother, everyone at work, they're acting like I'm some kind of monster." "Aren't you?" I asked. The question hung in the air like smoke. "I never meant for it to go this far," she whispered. I was unhappy, and Brent made me feel special, and I thought, "You thought you could have your cake and eat it too," I finished. "You thought you could keep me as your safe backup plan while you had your fun with someone more exciting, but most of all, you thought I was too weak and stupid to fight back." "That's not—" "Yes, it is, and you know what the funny thing is, Marlene? You were right about one thing. I am pathetic. I was pathetic enough to love someone who saw me as nothing more than a convenient target for her contempt, but I'm not pathetic anymore." I hung up and blocked her number. Desperation makes people stupid, and Marlene was getting very desperate. With her social circle collapsed, her finances frozen, and her lover facing professional ruin, she was running out of options. That's when she decided to get creative. I discovered her amateur hacking attempt on Wednesday evening. She tried to access our joint accounts from her laptop, probably hoping to transfer money before the divorce was finalized. What she didn't know was that I'd set up monitoring software on our home network months ago, standard cybersecurity practice that she'd always dismissed as computer nerd paranoia. The intrusion triggered an alert on my phone at 11:47 p.m. I was in my office, working late on a client project, when I got the notification that someone was attempting unauthorized access to our banking system. I pulled up the network logs and almost laughed. She was using the same password techniques she'd always used, trying variations of dates and names that any security professional could crack in minutes. But the attempt itself was enough to trigger the bank's fraud protection system. At 11:52 p.m., my phone rang. "Mr. Pierce? This is Janet from First National Bank's fraud department. We've detected suspicious activity on your accounts and have temporarily frozen all access pending verification." "I appreciate the call," I said. "Can you tell me what kind of activity?" "Multiple failed login attempts from an unrecognized device, followed by an attempt to transfer large amounts to an external account. We take these situations very seriously." "As you should," I agreed. "I'd like to file a formal complaint. I believe my estranged wife may be attempting to access accounts without authorization." Within an hour, 2 police officers were at my door. Not to arrest anyone. Unauthorized access to joint accounts wasn't typically a criminal matter, but to document the incident and take statements. They were professional, thorough, and loud enough that half the neighborhood came out to see what was happening. Marlene emerged from the bedroom in her robe, her face pale as she realized what was unfolding. "Ma'am," Officer Rodriguez said, "we need to ask you some questions about computer access and banking activity." Watching Marlene try to explain her way out of that situation was almost worth 8 years of marriage. She stammered, deflected, and finally broke down crying while our neighbors watched from their driveways and windows. No charges were filed, but the damage was done. By Thursday morning, the entire subdivision knew that Marlene Pierce had tried to steal money from her husband's accounts and had the police called on her. But Marlene's humiliation was nothing compared to what was about to happen to Brent. I'd been monitoring his movements through social media and mutual connections. He'd been laid off from his pharmaceutical job pending the investigation into his conduct, and he was spiraling. His Instagram posts had gone from confident gym selfies to increasingly erratic rants about being set up and fighting back against lies. Friday night, he made his move. I was leaving my favorite bar, O'Malley's, a working-class place where I'd been coming for years, when I spotted him in the parking lot. He was leaning against my Honda, clearly drunk, clearly angry, and clearly looking for a confrontation. "Landon Pierce," he slurred as I approached, "the computer nerd who thinks he's so smart." "Brent," I said calmly, pulling out my phone and starting a voice recording. "You're drunk and you're trespassing. Go home." "You ruined my life," he said, pushing off from my car and swaying slightly. "My job, my reputation, everything. For what? Some cheating whore who doesn't even love you?" "Careful," I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous register. "You're about to say something that will make your current problems look minor." But Brent was too drunk and too angry to recognize the warning. He stepped closer, his fists clenched, and made the mistake of putting his hands on me. The shove wasn't hard, but it was enough. Assault, captured on my phone's audio recording, witnessed by 3 people coming out of the bar. I didn't hit him back. I didn't need to. I just smiled and said, "Thank you. My lawyer is going to love this." Brent's face went white as he realized what he'd just done. Public intoxication, assault, harassment, all documented, all witnessed, all adding up to a very expensive legal problem. "This isn't over," he said, backing away. "Yes," I said quietly. "It is." The restraining order was approved Monday morning. Brent Collier was now legally prohibited from coming within 500 feet of me, my home, or my workplace. The assault charge was pending, and his unemployment benefits had been suspended pending the outcome of his former employer's investigation. Marlene, meanwhile, was living in a cheap extended stay hotel, surviving on the charity of friends who were rapidly losing interest in her drama. The divorce papers had been served, and she had 30 days to respond. Her lawyer, a bottom feeder who advertised on bus benches, had already indicated that fighting the divorce would be futile given the evidence against her. I thought it was over. I thought they'd both learned their lessons and would slink away to rebuild their shattered lives somewhere else. I should have known better. Desperate people don't go quietly. The call came from Big Mike, the bouncer at O'Malley's, on Wednesday evening. "Landon, you need to know something." His gravelly voice came through my phone. "Your ex-wife and that boyfriend of hers were in here an hour ago, asking questions about you. Wanted to know your schedule, when you usually come in, that sort of thing." "What did you tell them?" "Nothing useful," Mike said. "But they seemed pretty worked up, talking about exposing the truth and making you pay. Thought you should have a heads up." I thanked Mike and called Leah immediately. "They're planning something," I told her. "I can feel it." "The restraining order covers harassment," she said. "If they approach you, call the police immediately." But I had a better idea. Thursday night, I made my usual trip to O'Malley's. I sat at my regular spot at the bar, ordered my usual beer, and waited. I'd texted Leah my location and asked her to be on standby. I'd also discreetly arranged for Mike to have his phone ready to record whatever was about to happen. They arrived at 9:30, just as the evening crowd was settling in. Marlene looked terrible, her hair unwashed, her clothes wrinkled, dark circles under her eyes. Brent looked worse, unshaven and twitchy, like a man who'd been drinking for days. They made a beeline for my table, and I could see heads turning as people recognized the drama about to unfold. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marlene announced loudly, her voice carrying across the bar, "I'd like you all to meet my husband, Landon Pierce. He's a cyberstalker and an abuser who's been systematically destroying my life because I had the courage to leave him." The bar went quiet. Every eye was on us. This was exactly what I'd hoped would happen. I stood up slowly, my beer still in my hand, and smiled. "That's an interesting story, Marlene," I said, my voice carrying clearly in the silence. "Would you like to tell everyone why you really left me? Because you're a controlling, manipulative—" "Because you've been having an affair for 6 months," I interrupted. "Because you stole money from our joint accounts to pay for hotel rooms. Because you tried to frame me for domestic abuse to get a better divorce settlement. Because you're a liar, a thief, and a sociopath who got caught." Brent stepped forward, his fists clenched. "You son of a bitch, you destroyed my career." "You destroyed your own career when you decided to use my wife to spy on my clients," I said calmly. "Industrial espionage is a federal crime, Brent. You're lucky I didn't press charges." The crowd was murmuring now, pieces of the story clicking into place. Marlene's face was flushed with rage and humiliation. "You're lying," she screamed. "He's lying about everything." That's when Leah walked through the door, briefcase in hand, looking like an avenging angel in a business suit. "Actually," she said, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade, "we have documentation of everything Mr. Pierce just described. Text messages, financial records, hotel receipts, and recorded conversations where Mrs. Pierce admits to planning false accusations of abuse." She opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "Would anyone like to see the evidence?" Marlene went white. Brent took a step back. The crowd pressed closer, hungry for the details of a drama that was better than anything on television. "This is harassment," Marlene said weakly. "You can't just—" "Actually, we can," Leah said smoothly. "Everything we're discussing is part of the public divorce record. Freedom of information." That's when Brent made his second mistake of the week. Whether it was the alcohol, the humiliation, or just plain stupidity, he decided to take a swing at me. I saw it coming from a mile away. Brent telegraphed his punch like an amateur, and I stepped aside easily. His momentum carried him forward, and he crashed into an empty table, sending glasses flying and landing hard on the floor. The bar erupted in laughter and cheers. Mike was recording everything, and at least a dozen other phones were pointed in our direction. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, raising my beer in a toast, "my ex-wife and her lover. A woman who tried to destroy me with lies, and a man who's now violated a restraining order in front of 50 witnesses." I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. "Yes, I'd like to report a restraining order violation and assault. The suspect is on the ground in front of me." Brent struggled to his feet, a cut on his forehead oozing slightly. "This isn't over," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Yes, it is," I said. "It's been over since the moment you decided to mess with someone smarter than you." The police arrived within minutes. Brent was arrested for violating the restraining order and public intoxication. Marlene was escorted out, but not charged. Humiliation wasn't a crime, even when it was this thorough. As the crowd dispersed and the excitement faded down, I found myself alone at the bar with Mike and Leah. "That was beautiful," Mike said, grinning, "like watching a masterclass in revenge." Leah was more practical. "The video evidence from tonight will make the divorce proceedings very straightforward. She'll be lucky to get anything." I nodded, but I wasn't thinking about the divorce anymore. I was thinking about Marlene's face when she realized that her attempt to publicly destroy me had backfired spectacularly. I was thinking about Brent sitting in a jail cell, finally understanding that actions have consequences. Most of all, I was thinking about how good it felt to win.